All right, welcome to episode 2, Wing It Podcast, GooseDigital.com. Who do we got here today?
Chris O'Neill.
Kevin Butler.
Michael Turcsanyi. Okay, we're gonna get. This is our second one. Put this together about 5 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, to be fair, this deck was put together for a presentation that Kevin gave,
and it took a long time.
Yeah, the deck itself took a really long time. So we're talking about Kev, what are we talking about here?
So this was a presentation from earlier this year where we looked at the evolving role of marketers and marketing and what we're now referring to as the end-to-end customer journey.
All right, so we had a presentation that it talked about 5 marketing automation use cases to power the rest of your business.
Yeah, so the idea there is I think most people understand today that marketing automation is used for lead generation, whether it's landing pages, emails, etc. But I think as we talk about the evolving role of marketing and the role technology will play and support that, it's so much more than just lead gen. And that was the point of the rest of your business and all the other things, whether it's in life customer marketing or whether it's even things related to channel and partner or even internal comms for that matter.
Okay, interesting. Well, I don't know about you, Chris, but I remember about everybody in the entire conference came for this. I mean, we've got pictures on our blog if people want to check it out. I mean,
that was the most important thing, was that Kevin stood up there and talked for about 20 minutes. It was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe.
Well, it's 26 including questions.
Oh, now we're getting into 26. Okay.
Anyway, so he walked around the stage for about 25, 26 minutes, and the presentation was very well received to the point where we basically had to turn people away at the booth because there were so many people wanting to spend time with Kevin. He was like, he was kind of like the Maharishi when all was said and done.
It rang home because I think this, and there's a link to this that we'll put in the description so people can grab this deck. But we talk a lot about, for the people that were there, they were all marketers, some junior, most probably intermediate to senior. So they're all faced with this type of challenge where basically, we go into this, the role of marketing is changing.
Yeah, what was really interesting about this audience in particular is how broad of a group of marketers this was. So it wasn't just seniority, but it was about focus there. Like we had, if you remember at the beginning of the session, I asked the question asking how many marketers here today is their primary job to drive leads? And it was like less than half the room. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting to me is how various marketers from across the org have very different goals than just driving
net new leads.
But I think what they're all trying to drive, what their all goal is engagement. And whatever that audience is, needs to be engaged. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've got the old school industry prospect awareness versus the end-to-end customer experience. That was a slide that kind of opened the whole thing up.
Yeah, I think to me, and again, we talk about evolving marketing, but I think in a more traditional sense, marketing's been looked at as, big branding exercises or establish an identity amongst an audience. But now in today's marketing, and certainly tomorrow's, we're saying, how is marketing owning it from starting it at an awareness level and bringing it all the way through to some sort of customer and then additional revenues on that customer, upsells, cross-sells, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've been talking quite a bit, and when we go to a marketplace that in some cases does not have a very good even sales plus marketing alignment, we start with that picture where 20 years ago sales and marketing didn't share a lunchroom. It was like there was a total separation between the two groups. Now sales plus marketing is basically table stakes. Like you can't be operating in a vacuum anymore. And now as we've been finding, people and some presentations that we made today where people are looking for more than just that sales plus marketing, but that entire end-to-end sort of experience. And so that's where the marketing automation ties everybody together on that communication path.
Yeah, there's a role in there because I think another, like an alternate word for alignment would be consistency, sales and marketing consistency, and how that impacts the journey is you can't have one group. So I guess marketing being at the front of the chain in terms of awareness and that first connection with an audience. saying something totally or radically different than what the salesperson will say when they enter in the fold halfway through, and then all of a sudden the prospect or customer is, it's like two different organizations talking, and you're either not making a great impression, not getting the deal, or some sort of combination, right?
Well, I think what we heard today was that, I mean, marketing in this particular organization has much more control. I mean, they use the word control. So we talk about the role of the marketer changing, which was, one of the big slides that talked about, the differences between yesterday and today. And then, you talk about sales and marketing alignment. What you're saying is that the marketing teams of today are driving all the way down to, what happens when you pick up the phone? What's that? Oh, they came through a special ad that hit a unique landing page that had this personalization, and then you get on the phone and you're like, just a number, right?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot. Like Chris, you and I have talked about this a lot too, and I think we're aligned. But I think marketing holds more influence in that end-to-end journey than they ever have in the past. I think from that perspective, sales holds less. That doesn't diminish the role of sales. Like I really believe the key to growth in an organization is through sales and talented salespeople. But I think marketing is certainly supporting a lot more of that journey. If you think of it as a horizontal line, I think marketing's got a role in each stage, right? Whether it's prospect and an opportunity and then into customer. Sales will take lead in some areas versus others, and then back out once the deal's done, and then the account team can really come in and support and own. But I think marketing is really underpinning a lot of that now, either through messaging strategy, but in a lot of cases technology.
But I think you could say, with this one you've got here, industry prospect awareness versus the end-to-end customer experience from the old school Wrigley's, PepsiCo to now with the digital modern marketer. In the past, marketing really didn't know the customer. I mean, maybe in some big consumer packaged goods, maybe sales didn't 100% know the customer either. But, in lots of organizations, it was sales that knew the customer. I mean, they were the ones that were in the meetings. They were the ones that were doing the deals. They were the ones that were thinking through all this.
Well, fair to say, sales knew the customer uniquely. Marketing knew the segments.
Yeah, where now you can have, marketing can can weigh in on those conversations and get more specific about the messaging. So maybe sales doesn't need to be so concerned with sort of crafting that, and that's where the they don't share a lunchroom kind of concept came from.
That's right, and I think it's true what what Kevin was saying before about the marketing sort of having a larger part of that cycle. It's very true, and I think the ideal scenario is where there's that sort of interaction back and forth. So there's a place for the sales organization in the journey, and with marketing and sales working together, passing that customer interest back and forth using the modern technology tools to do so. I think that's where you get the the most bang for your buck.
Okay. So, I mean, as we get into the rest of it, I mean, it builds up to what eventually is, utilizing these platforms in other ways than just lead gen, to your point at the beginning. But it starts off to, really talk about the rise of the marketing technology and, to how there's literally 10,000 pieces of technology that are kind of in this MarTech landscape, and how does anybody really keep a handle on that? And
yeah, it's sort of like, I always look at that as it's a chicken before the egg scenario, where you've got marketing as a function owning a lot more of that whole life cycle, and then at the same time you've got this explosion of available marketing technologies, right? So in the stats we got from Chief Martech, they've got some great stats, but it was something like 8 years ago there's 350 technologies, and fast forward today, we're looking at over 10,000 by 2019.
Right.
Like, where did that come from? And I think we've talked about this a lot. We talk about a lot of this with our customers and prospects, is this idea of like, what's the role that each play? And I think a lot of the time when you're plugging in 8 or 9 technologies into this MarTech stack, you don't really have a succinct strategy for each of them. And then again, more so on the total package of stack, what's the role that each of them play with each other?
Right. And we talk about sales and marketing not sharing a lunchroom. I mean, what about marketing and IT sharing a lunchroom? I mean, do they even do that today?
I hope not.
I mean, that sounds pretty scary to me.
That is a scary lunchroom.
Well, that's another podcast all in itself.
I know that really, I was thinking about that. It really is its own.
You've got the new breed of marketers, highly technical, right? Very definitely has tech chops, knows enough to be dangerous. IT probably hates that. But you've got this new growing role in larger enterprise organizations. What is it like? The chief marketing technologist, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, is that a hybrid role? Does like the CIO get like crushed down a bit in the org chart? Like, I don't know what that looks like. That's a different podcast.
Well, but different. But the one thing I was thinking about today when we were talking to that client who used the word control, which was kind of surprised me a little bit. But then you know what I thought of? I thought of the fact that he's sitting in the middle of a very large dynamic organization. Large meaning like the populated. There's a lot of people in that organization, and I think control. What he was looking for, and why our message, which was at the show, resonated with him, was that the strategy that we could apply to override those sort of individual tangents that might be taken by people wanting to execute on these various technologies, he's really looking for more of that strategic approach,
right,
which he called control.
Yeah.
I think another part, just going back quickly to this idea of alignment or consistency, part of the control there is if he's doing all the work lifting at the beginning to drive awareness, drive interest with leads and an audience, he wants to control that message through to, if it's the salesperson championing that message and closing it into what we would consider like account management or customer experience. I think he wants to control that because he or she is saying, why would I go and do all that heavy lifting up front for that message to change, derail, or whatever down the road? So there's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you're right. We could probably just push this over to another podcast, because I mean, part of the presentation really built on how CMOs and marketing departments are owning much more of the technology budget, and part of the theme as we bring it back to marketing automation and just being able to use it for more than just lead generation is that, well, people have just grabbed all this stuff, and it's SaaS now, it's a monthly fee, it's a credit card, you have all this software available to you, and you take a breath and you end up looking back 18 months like, what the hell is all this stuff? We have it all. We're not really using any one of these things to its maximum potential. Now that's okay if it's maybe a little widget off to the side and it's testing something, but when it's your marketing automation platform, there's a lot of untapped potential. And I think what things we saw, I know Kev, you wanted to bring up these stats, so why don't you rhyme these off?
Yeah, a little bit of a stats pack here. So there was a great study last year done by eConsultancy. They talked to several thousand marketers, I think well over 2,000. But the principal sort of stats that came from this survey was 98% of marketers believe marketing automation will play a crucial role in the success of their job, driving leads and doing all the things that they're supposed to do. But what's really interesting to me is, of that basically full audience that agreed almost universally, is that only 53% of those marketers today currently even have marketing automation in place.
So that's a big gap right there.
So I guess I'm wondering, I don't have the data in front of me, but it's like, are the other half basically sort of in the middle of rolling something out, thinking about it, evaluating it, or is there a good percentage of marketers there that just don't have this on their radar at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would think that most are probably doing traditional, more old school email systems and landing pages and all off to the side. And
it could be like, especially in legacy industries, we see that a lot.
Yeah.
Where there's like the foundations of what they're doing are in the spirit of what we would consider marketing automation, emails and sort of web landing pages.
So what you're saying is we're in a good business, Chris.
We're in a good business.
We have some room to grow.
We have definitely room to grow, and if when industries sort of take on the concept not only of being able to drive leads and not only just augmenting their existing super sales force with these tools that help to power their conversations with their customers, but also do all these other things, all these more end-to-end type of activities that can enhance an organization's effectiveness in communicating with its customers.
Well, so get this.
Yeah.
So we know half of the marketers in this survey, a pretty broad survey, use marketing automation today. So of that half, only 41% of them actually think they're using this technology to a fairly high degree. Like they're actually seeing a lot of value from it.
I knew we'd get down to the 80-20 rule eventually.
Yeah. So we have a recognition that everybody should have this system these types of systems in place. Recognize it's critical to driving value
and their success.
So we've got lots of room for organizations to adopt this stuff. Of the people that have started to adopt it, only 41% of them believe that they're
looking at this,
getting the value out of it.
A quarter of marketers surveyed by eConsultancy,
yeah,
think they're using automation fairly well.
Which makes sense. I mean, we're talking about software that's sort of
it's in its first 10 years.
Yeah, going into its second real 10-year wave, and people, the early adopters have taken it on. Now you got the second wave, and people are settling into this thing. So I mean, I don't know that's a surprise. I don't know if that's like a surprise, but it's certainly they're covering the space now, which is nice to be able to see the numbers.
One of the surprises I think is that it does seem to be sort of industry by industry when somebody gets into it. I know we've talked about a few of the industries that seem to be a little bit slow to adopt, and I'm not sure if that's as we were saying before about sort of like an older school kind of senior executive group that just wants to hold on to that idea that it's all about relationships.
I'm sure.
I think that's part of it. You know what another really big part is? We do enough of these conversations with all sorts of industries to hear this a lot. Is it's not as simple as let's go launch marketing automation. It's not a money thing and it's not a resource thing. What it really is there's a series of things that have to happen first, right? So it's usually, is the CRM adequate enough to really get another 5 to 7 years out of with a new breed of system over top of it? Is the data in a state where it's actually usable and they can then build processes to understand what's going on with a new technology like marketing automation? I think when we talk about doing things with prospects related to marketing automation, it's never clean. Very rarely is it clean where it's to say, I have a marketing automation project, let's go tomorrow. It's always, okay, I want to do this, but that's phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 of a bigger thing, and that bigger thing involves things like data, CRM, or other technologies, right?
I mean, we've certainly helped clients overcome the inability to act, where they're thinking, my ERP just isn't good enough, and well, actually, maybe it is. Can we get you 18 to 24 months into your plan before that really becomes a growth hindrance? There's probably a lot of value that we can unlock in an 18 to 24 month period before.
That's a great point.
Before you start looking. So I think a lot of times clients, and we've come across them, and then subsequently close them, where they know marketing automation. To your point, they can see it, but then they just we can't do it. They don't know how to do it without.
I do think there's a part of, especially those who haven't done automation before, where there's sort of they're a bit locked into thinking it's got to be this big bang sort of situation, where it's like we got to have all the pieces solved first before we can even start executing on stage 1 or phase 1. I think to your point, these graduated phases make a lot more sense. Like you can do the first few years with a legacy CRM or legacy ERP, while we do the other stuff on the front end, build those processes out, and then eventually there will come a time where we can migrate it all to a new Salesforce instance or whatever. But I don't think you have to do it all in one shot. That's almost impossible.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, what they do have to have though is a value proposition, and oftentimes we start the conversation with just an understanding that we need to be able to articulate that to even just get started. And we like to start from the front. So the value proposition has got to be in place. It's got to be understood and clear. And once that's the case, then from then on, it's connecting the dots.
But as far as value props go, you're right. Like have something solid in place, but not so solid that it can't change and evolve. Because I think the one thing we see with these systems so frequently is because they're they are interaction machines more than anything else with an audience. It's giving you the opportunity to see how your audience reacts to these messages. And so I think that your value prop over time should evolve a bit.
Yeah, I
Maybe not
agree. I mean,
drastically.
I think that, to say,
This is it. This is the value prop for the next 10 years.
Yeah, but you're right. People get into that. They'll obsess over every word of a sentence that is supposed to represent, the part of their elevator pitch. And it's like, okay, yeah, you should, but if you're worried about putting messaging out there, like I always like to say, like, if you're not embarrassing yourself and it's in the general direction of what you think matches, your audiences, and if you've done persona work and you think you're there, just have the measurement framework in place to know whether or not it's working, and be able to adapt, because you're not going to know that out of the gate. So to hold up a marketing automation rollout, right? Yeah, some people are scared too. They don't want to maybe put their messaging in front of people at that level because they're worried. Well, geez, what if it doesn't work? But yeah, certainly, I agree. It's hard to control a customer's value. Probably we can't control that, but we can put it out there, test it, help them be agile. So I think we'll probably want to do a couple of these, and again, we'll link to the presentation because there's a lot of great stuff in it for any marketer to pull from, because it goes through 5 use cases in
outside of lead generation.
Outside of lead generation, in fairly good depth. So, it goes through customer service, how to use the platform to drive your customer service initiatives, customer marketing, huge potential. I mean, some customers, to your point, 50% of the audience roughly on a hand up aren't even driving lead gen. It's not their principal role. Maybe it's member marketing. Maybe they have, brokers, agencies. Maybe they have a different way to look at their customers to drive renewals, to drive, re-ups, growth, cross-sells, upsells. Partner marketing, communicate, having a whole partner strategy. Internal communications, how are you communicating with your own team and understanding how that's going, and your recruiting and onboarding.
Yeah, that's something that we've been talking a lot about doing at Goose, actually, is when we identify either a candidate we want to hire, is starting to put that sort of individual into a drip campaign where it's maybe on the first day, they're going to get a series of emails, right? This is where you find this is where you find that. And it's all documented in their inbox, right? Things like that. Or it's maybe on your 3-month anniversary, you can just trigger this all in advance to say, an email ends in this individual's inbox where it's maybe time, take 15 minutes out, reflect on what you've liked, what you haven't liked, what you think you could do better. A
little survey. Yeah, you could do some of your capture.
And remember, we actually ran our Christmas party promotion on marketing automation. They had to register, our employees had to register through a very crude landing page that I built as marketing. And there was subsequent email drips that teased about what is this event we're doing for the Christmas party, and of course we were tracking all their behaviors, opens, clicks, and I could go and sort of harass the individuals who hadn't yet registered. And
yeah.
So that's a fun example.
But you have a platform; it's already integrated into your CRM. It's there to be used, and yeah, unfortunately, the first 10 years of these systems have been relegated to lead generation. I mean, that's kind of where they went. It was probably the easiest thing to sign on a check.
The most immediate value to prove.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think like something that I say to a lot of our clients is, if you take any automation platform, Marketo, Acton, HubSpot, Pardot, whatever it is, the very best users of those systems and the very worst users, or the ones deriving the least amount of value, they all use the same system. So it's really about how you use it, how you deploy it, and recognizing that a marketer's role now and in today and tomorrow's world isn't just about lead gen. So you're paying the same thing for that tool either way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should circle back on this one, but we'll link the presentation in the YouTube.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And we can expand on these on future episodes. But otherwise, episode 2.
In the books.
Done.
Peace out.